Now, I have often said that you are allowed to like or dislike anything that you want. If you don't like certain companies, that's completely fine. If you like them, that's also fine. People are allowed to like and dislike and make whatever videos or talk about stuff however the way that they want to when it comes down to video games. It's all good at the end of the day. But I found this to be actually funny because nobody covered this story, and I felt that maybe I should cover this because it involves gaming and it involves somebody that was a prominent figure in gaming. So Mike Ybarra, he is the current CEO of Prize Picks. Formerly, he was the president of Blizzard Entertainment and a corporate VP at Microsoft, Windows, and Xbox. So this guy used to be right in the thick of it with Phil Spencer and all of that. He was there. I remember his name quite a bit. He'd be talking about Xbox and stuff, and they've had him on shows and all that. But anyway, it was so funny to see him because really I kind of just forgot about him overall after he left and all that. But it was interesting because a few months ago when Nintendo aired the April 2nd Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, he had a lot to say, not only right there at the launch, but then also afterwards on Twitter, and then even right before the launch, he was talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 quite a bit. Now, it didn't dominate his whole timeline, but he had a lot of tweets and all of that to say about the system. And I kid you not, I've been looking and I've been kind of asking him, hey man, you want to give us an update on what's happening with the Nintendo Switch 2? Like, how do you feel about it? The funniest thing is that he refuses to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2, despite talking about it quite a bit before the launch. So let's go over what he had to say at first. Now, I first caught wind of what he said when he put out a tweet on, it was, I think, April 2nd. It was the day of the Direct. And the tweet said, hard pass for me on Switch 2. So he just said, hard pass. That's fine. There's no big deal. If you don't like it or whatever the case, that's fine. I don't think I even responded to anything that he said. That's completely fine. But then somebody asked him, wait a minute, as somebody who agrees, like, why the strong stance? And then he said this, I basically played Mario and Zelda on it. Switch 2 will cost more, same low frames, $80 games, etc. I'll stick with PC and skip Mario and Zelda for a while. So I found this to be interesting because I'm not sure where we got the same low frames from, because all he plays is Mario and Zelda. Mario and Zelda are all running at 60 frames per second on the Switch 2, which Nintendo obviously showed that. So that was interesting that he's saying same low frames, yet everything was running at 60 FPS in terms of Mario and Zelda that was shown at that Direct, with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild both being at 60 FPS, and then also Mario Kart World being at 60 FPS as well. Now, the $80 stuff, I get that. I think he thought maybe every game was 80 overall, but it was just Mario Kart World. But if he just plays Mario and Zelda, then I can understand overall in terms of what he's saying. But of course, we'll see later down the line. Now, once again, that necessarily wasn't a problem at all. I'm just giving you guys some backstory in terms of what he's tweeted before. Now, here's another thing that I found really funny that he tweeted afterwards, April 3rd, and he says, $500 for game chat in 2025. Let's go. So it's more than just simply, just talk about and say, hey, it's not for me. But then he starts going out there, putting out the misinformation stuff, or more like sarcastic or whatever. $500 for game chat. It's like, what is he talking about? That's like the trolling type of stuff. So whatever, right? Everybody has a little bit of fun. Obviously, he's not feeling the system. That's no big deal. But he's once again talking about Switch 2. And then again, after that, he puts out some more tweets. He says some more stuff in terms of response to people. Now, one guy asked him, like, how do you think the system's going to do overall? And he said this, well, it is Nintendo, so they have power. But remember, their audience is largely younger. Will parents go for $500 and $80 games in volume like Switch 1? A bet I would not take. So this right here is actually false in terms of Nintendo's audience. He doesn't know Nintendo's audience, but if you actually look at the demographics that Nintendo's revealed publicly of their audience, a big chunk of people, the large majority, it seems like, to me at least, based off of the charts, is actually 20 to 40 year olds. Like, that's where a ton of people are. And then of course those parents buy their kids stuff as well. So the people that are actually buying their kids Nintendo platforms are actual gamers that also buy the system and play or grew up in the GameCube era or the Super Nintendo era or the NES era. That's what the data says, at least. And if you're looking at all the different launch lines and looking at all the people that are buying the Switch 2 overall, it pretty much lines up with that. The large majority or bulk of people that are going to be buying this system are going to be adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So he didn't know that, and you know, whatever. It is what it is. He's maybe just didn't research that. But it keeps going, guys. I know, it keeps going. So he also posted that same day about Cyberpunk. He quote tweeted Nintendo, and Nintendo talked about Cyberpunk, saying Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition is $70 on Switch 2, runs at 40 FPS in performance mode, while docked. Physical release comes with a 64GB game card with no download required. So he quote tweeted that and said 40 FPS in performance mode is big death signs. He just says that he just plays Mario and Zelda when it comes to Nintendo platforms or whatever, so I'm not sure why he's worried about Cyberpunk and performance mode and all that. When it comes to Mario and Zelda, those run at 60. But anyway, so he's still tweeting about that. Whatever, he's allowed to have his opinion or whatever the case is. Although, of course, if you're talking about like a hybrid system, obviously, hybrid system, 40 FPS performance mode, how it's running is actually not going to be too bad. So it continues on, guys. I know a lot of you guys are probably like, what the heck is going on, right? All right, so this is where it kind of reaches the apex, all right? So on June 4th, right, all of those tweets were like April 2nd, April 3rd, maybe a little bit after that. But then he comes back. On June 4th, 2025, Nintendo of America put out like essentially a big tweet saying, hey, look, oh, we're launching the Nintendo Switch 2. It's coming out this week, or whatever the case is, right? The launch was June 5th, but of course, like, they were getting ready for the launch. So he quote tweets them. So obviously they can see it and all that. So he quote tweets them and says, most muted launch in history. Didn't even remember this was this week. So the most muted launch in history. It's quite clear based on what he said before when it comes to people buying the system. In addition to the launch being completely muted, he thinks this thing is going to flop completely. That's a pretty big statement, right? So after that, that is his official last post on the Nintendo Switch 2 because he has not made a single statement on the system after the massive sales. So I kind of did a little trolling thing, and on a few different posts of his, I put up like, yo, Mike, we need an update. And I essentially put up the tweet from Nintendo of America saying that it sold 3.5 million units in its first 4 days, becoming the fastest selling Nintendo hardware ever globally. But that's actually the fastest selling hardware ever globally. And Mike just got done saying that it was the most muted launch. So he refuses to talk about Switch 2. He refuses to mention it at all. Even when people post, or when I posted more like it, about, hey, Mike, you know, what do you think about this? He won't actually respond. He won't talk about it at all. And I just found that to be hilarious. And it kind of goes in common with so many people that have made Switch 2 will fail videos, or were bashing it beforehand, or whatever the case. They're saying that it's going to flop or it's going to fail. They won't even talk to you. They won't even say anything, or they'll make excuses. But yeah, he refuses to even mention it, despite having multiple tweets here that we went over talking about the system. Listen, man, we're all never right about 100% of things. I've been wrong on something, but at least you can just say, yo, my bad, I was wrong, you know, when it comes down to it. Or at least respond to people that are asking you a question when it comes to Switch 2. Like, yeah, he was wrong. But maybe he doesn't want to look like he didn't know what he was talking about, because he was a former corporate executive or corporate VP over at Microsoft. On the fact that people are going to be like, wait a minute, you thought it was going to flop or fail. You had all this stuff to say, and then it actually ended up being not the most muted launch in history, but actually the best launch ever in the history. It's a complete opposite. It's a 180 from what you said. So no hate towards Mike, and trust me, I'm not trying to do that. I just found that it was interesting and funny that a former executive at Microsoft was this off on that and refuses at this point to talk about Switch 2 at all. So I thought that was just interesting and thought I would cover it for you guys. But what do you think on that? You can let me know in the comment section. But we are going to move on to some other Nintendo Switch 2 topics. I think this one's pretty cool because Super Mario Strikers is coming to the Nintendo Switch Plus expansion pack next week. So that's some awesome stuff. They showed off the trailer, but I think it's got some charm when it comes down to it. 60 FPS. People were kind of upset when it comes to Mario Strikers Battle League. Not even kind of. People were really upset with Mario Strikers Battle League and how the online play worked and stuff like that. But now you have Super Mario Strikers Charge, which many feel is the best Mario Strikers game, along with the Wii game as well. And with this, you can play online with your friends. Now remember, with NSO Plus, there is no matchmaking, so it's not like you can just like hop into it and then go with a random or something like that, but you can link up with your friends because it emulates or simulates you being right there in the same room with them, like it's local multiplayer. That's how that works, and that's how they can get multiplayer on pretty much every single game released on NSO, whether it's an NES game all the way up to GameCube games. So I think that's pretty cool overall. Now the game will be coming out on July 3rd, 2025. And once again, that Nintendo GameCube Classics app is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. It adds to the list of games that we've got here: The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, we have F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2. Now, there are some issues at this point with the GameCube on Nintendo Switch 2. I know MVG made a video talking about that with some of the input latency and certain things that can still be straightened out. There's still time to get that. Now, I've actually played the GameCube F-Zero game, and I thought it was okay, but then again, I didn't play it extensively, so I don't know every single little nook and cranny, and I didn't test every single little thing when it comes down to it, but hopefully they have some updates for the GameCube app to where it runs and it's a little bit better for everyone that's playing it, because yeah, it is, you know, not the cheapest service out there overall, not the most expensive, but not the cheapest either. So hopefully they can get that all situated. But yeah, I think people are going to be excited. If you're happy with the GameCube NSO and how it plays, game control and all that, this is going to be great. And I think this is actually going to get me to play the GameCube NSO a bit more, because all the games that they've released on there, I've already played quite a bit, and I'm not the biggest F-Zero fan out there. So I'm looking forward to checking out Super Mario Strikers on the service. So what do you guys think about Super Mario Strikers coming over on July 3rd? Let me know in the comment section. But now we're going to move on to what Mr. Furukawa had to say about the Nintendo Switch 2 massive sales and the shortages that we are seeing right now, especially in Japan. So Mr. Furukawa, Nintendo's president, actually talked about this at a shareholders meeting and apologized for the stock situation, saying that, hey, look, we did our best, but you know what? It is what it is. So, quote, currently there is more demand than supply for Switch 2 in many countries, and we are not able to meet it. We understand that some of our shareholders have not been able to obtain the product. We have accepted lottery sales on the My Nintendo store since April. The number of applicants far exceeds our expectations. Since then, we have held 4 lottery sales, but some people did not win. I announced that the 5th lottery would be held in July. As for the general mass retailers, many of them also sold by lottery. Gradually, more and more stores are selling the products in their stores. We will make every effort to supply the production system so that as many units as possible can be delivered. We apologize for any inconvenience caused by this initial demand, which was much higher than expected. So the interesting thing about the supply and demand situation for Nintendo is that they've sold more systems than pretty much any other system in Japan and of course worldwide. Like, there's been no other system that's ever had to put up this amount of product, and it's not even by a little bit. Now, there were extra circumstances for the reason why Sony and Microsoft couldn't put up more product back in 2020, or maybe they would have had numbers that were around 3 million or so in the first number of days. But obviously the COVID situation and all that, the chip shortage, they couldn't do anything about that. That's just what happened. So to see that Nintendo's been able to put up this much product and still are having problems, especially in Japan where the system sold over 1 million units, that's a record too. I mean, I'm not sure what else they could have done, because they did stockpile for multiple months. Like, we heard about the productions of the Nintendo Switch 2 systems as far back as last year, and you know that it's been a while that they've been stockpiling systems, because there's multiple types of how you even get a code in the box for the bundle with Mario Kart World. Some people have it on the bottom of the box, kind of like printed on the box, and then others have a sticker on top of it. So the process in terms of what they did for that even changed. So that's how you know it's been a while, and some of them have just been sitting in a warehouse. Also, the situation with lithium batteries and how the fact that you have to kind of wake your battery up, or you have to fix the display that was having issues, that's because a lot of them were just sitting in a warehouse not being used, so it caused some issues due to idle activity. So I think that they did the best they could with that, and hopefully they can continue to refresh and continue to get more and more stock out there. There was a recent stock drop in the US, and it only took pretty much a few hours for all those to be sold out in all of the major markets here in the US. Now, you might still be able to find some in certain areas, maybe a system or two, but a lot of the places are sold out with Best Buy, Walmart, Target, and all of that. Obviously bestseller for many of them as people are picking up Mario Kart World and of course getting ready for the huge game Donkey Kong Bonanza. But what do you guys think overall when it comes to what a former executive had to say about the Switch 2 and how he's not speaking on it anymore after being wrong? In addition to everything else that we covered, let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.